Good morning. I am in my van. I got into Orlando late last night, slept in my van at the airport. It was insanely hot. Hot, 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 hot. But it did cool down about 2 in the morning. But if you look at me, I look like crap. I had a really, really rough week last week. But I'm ready to go now. But it was pretty intense. It was like, I have all this stuff that my mom saved me from the past, and I found pictures because I always thought I was in Leningrad in the USSR in 1989, but it was in 1990. And it turns out I was there at the same time Putin was there. And when I was taken to an abandoned building, it was a university, but Putin actually was working at the Leningrad State University at that time. He had to leave Dresden after the wall fell. So I went to the USSR because they were holding elections, and they were really pushing for this whole thing with Gorbachev and what was it, perestroika, and so the KGB was like losing power. And so when the KGB detained me, they had to release me. So I was only held hostage by the KGB in 1990 for like 36 hours. I mean, I got so lucky. And, it was such a long time ago. I blocked my head from thinking about it, but, it was always, I would still have panic attacks because I was in a hotel room and people came through like the connecting door, and these men came and they grabbed me and they strapped me to a board and they shoved a towel in my mouth, and it was pretty freaky. But I've always had PTSD. That was one of my things, but working through it, I kind of just accepted it, and I thought, well, it just sounds too crazy. And I've had so many bizarre Russian incidences since I was, when I worked at Nissan on the executive floor. There were, at the time, Carlos Ghosn he was working with Putin to buy Autovance, which was Putin's car company. And this was in 2009. I guess they were in the early stages, and then they took $1.4 billion from the U.S. government for the Leaf, which was technology from the California Air Resource Board days that actually they deemed failed because of the low range. But when the Obama administration offered a ton of funding, Nissan got $1.4 billion. But there was never an audit. Nobody knows how that money was spent. I complained about it because people that worked on the Leaf in California, they weren't offered jobs in Tennessee. Yet then when Nissan goes to Tennessee, then they start taking federal taxpayer money to build a car with technology that they knew would not work. If you look at the Nissan Leaf, the range is very low. I mean, very little demand for that. So, long story short, somebody figured out that, I was using my married name when I worked over at Nissan, and I was called into HR, and I was told, I was accused of using an alias. An alias. I'm like, they knew who I was. And an executive contacted me from France and said that an email was sent globally to executives telling them that I was a spy. Now, I'm in Tennessee. I'm in America. I was not a spy when I worked at Nissan North America doing relocation, okay? I was a relocation consultant. I worked with their highest level executives. They had some insanely amazing people. I worked for Christian Munet, Frederick Lagrave, Carlos Tavares. Some people call him Tavares. You know what? I always called him Tavares. But he was an insane genius. He is now the CEO of Stellantis, and so it's a very small world. And I did send him some bizarre text messages, and he responded. And I told him that Sayakawa wanted to be the next CEO of Nissan, and Mr. Tavares wanted it. And you know what? He should have had it. So I sent him a message when I was at Trader Joe's saying that, I used to do propaganda work, like during the Reagan administration. I would help them become, if once people knew how corrupt this clique was that was connected to Carlos Ghosn, then, that he could then become CEO. And I met with him in person after that a couple times. So, yeah, that's kind of the story. And you know what? He's doing a great job at Stellantis. And actually, he went to Peugeot. He then, well, okay. So he was then transferred to Renault as the number 2. And, but he didn't go back to like Japan. And Sayakawa, what they wanted to do with Mr. Tavares is they wanted to set him up to fail. So the car that was released in America when Mr. Tavares came to be the president of Nissan North America was the Cube. And I told Mr. Tavares that it was a conspiracy because they wanted the Cube. They were telling him they were going to sell thousands and thousands and thousands of units per month. And he was going to give this speech at the Detroit Auto Show. And they were like saying the Cube is the greatest thing. Everyone's going to want one, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to be the next Altima. And I was sitting in the car with him. We were looking, where were we going? We were looking at homes for him to live in North America. And his wife, amazing lady. Oh my God, very, very kind. I mean, any CEO would be very lucky to have that woman as their wife. Very supportive. Anyway, so what happened is I told him about, I go, they're not going to sell those Cubes. And his wife just goes, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And oh my God. And he said, well, because he didn't understand the American consumer. And I said, it's a toaster on wheels. It's just, there's no way in hell. And I was right. And it just set off a bizarre chain reaction. Anyways, it's a very long, complicated story. But at the end of the day, I had to be proven wrong for Carlos Ghosn because Ghosn was working with Putin and then he needed that taxpayer money, not for the Leaf, but to help him buy auto vans. Now, there was a global economic crisis in 2008, 2009. Putin's car company was not doing well. And taxpayer money was used to bail out Putin. And the politicians that did it, including, I think, Bob Corker. Oh yeah, where's he now? I have an email from his office. They were supposed to help me out. No, instead, I was terrorized. But I've had these insanely awesome people from different government agencies and the Pentagon and members of our special forces that are retired that have kept me sane, well, and kept me alive and kept me, I'm doing pretty damn good. But it's been a long journey, but slowly everything is coming out. And I really freaked out Russia when I was working on the executive floor at Nissan, and I didn't understand this. I did not understand the overreaction about what I might have done in the 80s, okay? But it was because evidently when I was in Leningrad, and they took me from my hotel, took me to an empty building, and there were these KGB people, and I thought they were going to kill me, but no, then they released me. But they actually, I had to walk through this thing, and it was like a camp. It was very weird. It was like an abandoned building, but it was like, I don't know where I was. But then I had to walk to a road, and then these kids really, they took me to this other place, and this like Russian lady, oh, this guy gave me a Valium. It was very weird. And then, and I didn't want to take it. And then he goes, Valium. And I looked at it and I said, yeah, it was Valium. I'll take that. And then this Russian lady, she put makeup on me. And so when she was putting makeup on me, I mean, she was like holding me. And I mean, I was pretty stressed out. And she was putting makeup on me. And then these other people, then I got in their car. It was really an ugly car. I'm not talking Pinto ugly, but it was ugly. But they drove me, and I was a block away from the consulate general's office. And they dropped me off, and then I had to go, and I was then invited. I had dinner with the consulate general, and I got to sleep in the same room that Nixon slept in. So this whole thing is very confusing, but people in the intel community will know exactly what I'm talking about. But so all this happened in not 1989 like I thought it was in 1990. And I was doing it for, some of the people from the Reagan era, because Bush was president, but see, they needed to end communism by a certain date so Reagan would get the credit. So the deal was, if communism ended by a certain date, Reagan would get the credit. If it ended after a certain date, then Bush would get the credit. So the Reagan people, and Mr. Lesher, Dean Lesher of the Contra Costa Times, he was my mentor, an amazing guy, and he was the person that I was communicating with. So and he ended up dying in 1993, and when he died, I ended up having to leave California because I had so many connections, and it was just from all that Iran-Contra stuff, and I don't even know what happened with that. So people think I was involved with that, and it's like, you know what, all I did was I did research to want to get Americans to want to fund the Contras, and I didn't even understand what I was doing. And you can't blame people that are so low level, they don't know what the hell they're doing. But I'm a really good researcher. So I've gotten a couple projects, not paying very well, but just enough that, you know, I'm willing to do stuff just to help my country, but also help build me back, because it's been a bad decade, but I'm building myself back better. Anyways, you have a great day.